I begin with Anderson Cooper, host of AC 360 and apparently a man who never sleeps. Anderson, welcome. It's good to have you on the show.
It's great to be here, you.
I got to begin with just a homage. That was the triple axle of interviews last night with Donald Trump. A huge and unpredictable guest, an enormous story in the day involving the Pope, and breaking news in the middle of the interview from BuzzFeed. I mean, were you even aware of how hard that was to do?
It's the hard is working in a coal mine. I work in TV, so it's not the hardest paper route there is. But it's certainly good to have a conversation on a day when there's big news with the Pope's comments, and then obviously the BuzzFeed thing in the middle of the interview was interesting. So, I like these town hall formats. It was the second of two nights we'd done, and I was happy with how it turned out.
They were terrific. I only saw 4 of the 6. I did not see Dr. Carson or Governor Bush for a variety of reasons, but I saw the 4 of the 6. I want to start with Trump, though. The WMD story, I was reading on the plane today, Michael Hayden's new book, Playing It to the Edge. And on page 49, he writes, but we all thought there was a case for weapons of mass destruction. You pushed him, I think, 4 times, maybe 5, depending on how you count. He would not repeat the statement of Saturday night. What do you conclude from that, Anderson?
I think it's very telling, obviously, that he wouldn't repeat. First of all, I thought it was interesting that, to have the audience member who actually pushed him as well and actually kind of initially pushed him. And actually, it's rare you have an audience member jump in and interrupt the guest and, to push for an actual answer. I think the fact that he wouldn't is, it's telling. He obviously said that in a debate in the heat of the moment. He's obviously gotten pushback. George W. Bush, as you know better than anybody, is extremely popular among Republicans, particularly in South Carolina. He was out on the campaign trail this week. And so I think, Trump didn't want to give any more ammunition to anybody who might, view his comments about the former president negatively. And so I think Trump was trying to walk a line of not apologizing or not saying he was wrong, which, as you know, he's, loath to ever do, but also not repeating what he had said.
I thought he handled it in classic Trump fashion. He never, ever admits error. But he didn't double down on the original statement. And after 4 or 5 times, some people say we let Trump off easily, that I don't push him enough because I've had him on a dozen times.
Right.
But after 4 or 5 times, it becomes fruitless, and you're badgering the witness.
At a certain point, the audience knows somebody is not answering the question. And if you have re-asked them 4 or 5 times, which we did last night, the fact that he so clearly is not answering the question, that's an answer to the question in and of itself. And so I'm not sure what viewers expect at a certain point that you're going to, hit the person and say, scream at them. At a certain point, you ask them 4 or 5 times, and it's clear they're not answering. And then I think I finally said, look, I'm going to give you one last chance to answer this. Do you agree with what you said? Do you believe George W. Bush lied? And, Donald Trump, as you know, the way he answers stuff, the way he tries not to answer is by distracting stuff. So he brings in all sorts of other things. He tries to take you down different tangents, goes off on tangents and down different avenues. And, oftentimes if you're really pressed for time, that's an effective tool against an interviewer. In a town hall format, we have plenty of time, and so we're able to go back 4 or 5 times and just kind of return to the original subject.
I think it will come back again sometime in the campaign. I don't know, but that's a textbook journalism school bit of video. Let me talk to you about the BuzzFeed story because I'm curious about the backstory. I have the best producer in the world, Dwayne and Adam, and nevertheless, I'm very leery of breaking news in the middle of my show for fear that I haven't checked it out. So what did you do with that story?
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. The backstory on any of these interviews for your viewers is, it's a methodical process. I spent 2 or 3 days in meetings, looking at questions and thinking about how to go about this and what questions to ask and what kind of follow-ups. And, a lot of stuff happens in the spur of the moment, but you really don't want, ideally, you don't want a lot of unknowns in an interview like this because you want to get a sense of if I ask this question based on what, say, in this case, Trump has said in the past, he might say this, then I might come back with this. It's like three-dimensional chess. So I was literally, in a commercial break, handed a piece of paper with the BuzzFeed, with what was said by BuzzFeed, and there was no time to, for me to actually read the BuzzFeed article. There was no time for me to listen to the audio. I had to go with what was, handed to me on this piece of paper, and that's a situation I'm never comfortable in because I don't know who's typed, this onto a piece of paper. Did they do it word for word? I mean, I have great faith in my producers, but you want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. And so, I felt it was important to get Trump on the record and ask him about it, but I didn't want to belabor it because it wasn't something that I had time to look at because it was actually
exactly
happening.
I don't know that I would have trusted that, except for the fact I know the apparatus that CNN sends to these things. So you knew it had been vetted, but you still had to trust your team. It was another remarkable moment of journalism, as was your admission against interest regarding McDonald's, which I have to follow up on. I have been known to an extremist go to McDonald's, but the fetching Mrs. Hewitt has told me for 33 years it is the worst stuff. How often do you go to McDonald's?
It is the greatest food on the planet. I'm sorry. I mean, I know my dad died very young of heart disease, so I take massive doses of Crestor and Zetia and all sorts of statins and stuff. But I allow myself at McDonald's as a big treat like once a month, basically. So I'd had it the night before, and then I'd read in the research that Trump eats McDonald's, which I hadn't known. I just thought, part of what we try to do in these town halls is, it's rare for people in the rest of the country to be able to interact with a candidate and see a candidate in the kind of personal setting that folks in Iowa see, in New Hampshire and South Carolina to a lesser extent. And so the idea of the town hall is unlike a debate, which is really confrontational. You want it to be more conversational. And a small part of that is just, taking a minute or two for some light personal questions that often people end up kind of seeing a different side of a candidate. And it's easy to make fun of it. I know people on Twitter will say, oh, you wasted time by asking, Donald Trump about eating at McDonald's. But you know what? Out of the 45 or 50 minutes we talked to Trump, if you spend 2 minutes getting some personal anecdotes and personal stories, I think it sort of adds to a well-rounded sense of who these people are.
And the Kentucky Fried Chicken comment was funny, but the music stuff matters to me. I've asked him myself about that. I know he likes Elton John. Anderson Cooper, what was your first concert?
I'm not exactly sure. It was either Elvis Costello from the album Armed Forces or Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five.
You see, that's so wild.
I can't remember which came first. But actually, the truth is, my real first one was my mom, which shows you that I was raised by wolves. My mom took me to Studio 54 when I was 11 years old, and I saw Grace Jones perform at Studio 54. So I guess that was probably my first.
I've been watching the CNN, the 70s documentary because that's my high school years, and it's such a bad decade. And Studio 54 figures heavily in that. I can't believe she did that. Nevertheless, let me close with this. Jeb Bush is coming up. Politico is trying to write his obituary. They have 2 stories up right now, how Marco slew his mentor and Bush machine marching on fumes. I'll ask him about this. But did you see with Barbara Bush in the audience, did you have a palpable sense that the Hindenburg is coming down when it comes to Team Bush?
I don't pretend to be inside somebody's head. I thought he appeared confident on the stage last night. And I thought he did a good job in expressing himself, and it was interesting listening to his policies. Clearly he's not in the position that he's wanted to be in, and whether there is a lane beyond South Carolina, I don't know, and that will be something that he'll have to decide. But I think it's unfair. Look, this is in the hands of the voters as it should be, and let's see where things end up. Everybody in news wants to be first with something. I believe in much more just letting the voters tell us what's going to happen.
Last question. Everybody says that Ted Cruz is so disliked inside of D.C. I've known him for a few years. I like him a lot. Did you personally like him? Did you have a good connection with him?
Honestly, it was the first time I've actually really been with him for an extended period of time. It's the first time I'd actually even met him. You didn't get a lot of chance to talk in between, but, I can talk to anybody, and I like anybody who's throwing their hat in this and who is, doing what it takes to try to win. And so I enjoyed talking to him. I think he's obviously a very bright guy, very smart guy. And, I don't know him well enough to judge, what folks in Washington think of him. But I think he's a fascinating character and a very intelligent guy.
You got him just saying, great interviews, great preparation, Anderson Cooper. Thanks for joining me. Good luck on the show tonight. I'll be right back, America. Jeb Bush joins me next on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Hi, this is Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for stopping by my YouTube channel. Click right here to watch previous ones that you may not have seen, and click right here to subscribe to get all of them. And this is what you really need to do, is click right here to subscribe. Thanks for coming by. Don't miss a minute of any of the Hugh Hewitt YouTubes.